Hi, and welcome back to ACE 2020 Online. I've got two special guests with me today from the Energy and Geoscience Institute at the University of Utah, EGI Director Ray Levy and Professor Millen Dave of the Chemical Engineering Department and Special Assistant to the Vice President for Research. Gentlemen, welcome. Glad you could join us today.
Thank you.
So one of the things we want to talk about is EGI, Ray, and you've had a long history at the Institute. I too, in full disclosure, have had a long history at the Institute prior to joining AAPG. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the history and what EGI is about?
David, thanks. It's great to talk to you again. Yes, EGI is a rather, I think, unique organization as an institute at any university in the world. We are self-funded, and the funding for our research comes from both government and industry. And the program is entering its 49th year in 2021, which is an incredible testament to its longevity and the work it's done for both government and industry. Just to give you an idea, in terms of government, most of that work is for the Department of Energy, although other organizations like NSF, and in reality, EGI originated with NSF proposals to work on North Africa back at the time of the very first oil crisis back in 1972. So our roots go deep. They cover three core areas that you'll hear more about from my colleague, Millen Dev, and those are, yes, what AAPG does in oil and gas and coal. Second, geothermal energy, which of course is got a bright future, no pun intended. And then of course, something that's very important to both industries, and that's carbon sequestration. So we've had over 175 member companies across 6 continents since 1972. And what else would you like to know, Dave?
So that's interesting. So, I mean, obviously within the university context, federal funding, government funding is sort of a traditional source, but it sounds like EGI has really carved out a niche in terms of really focusing on industry needs. And tell us a little bit more about that. How do you actually stay current on what industry is interested in, what the topics are that they're looking to pursue?
Well, that's a great question. One of the very other unique aspects of EGI is we've been very fortunate. Over the years, we've had a high-level executive management from industry, from the various national and international oil companies, such as BP, Shell, Exxon, Total, and Eni. And that advisory board really functions to give us great advice. They also review what our research portfolio is all about, and very importantly, to keep us current, as you asked, they give us a sense of what is being done in the industry, what are the industry directions, where can an institute like EGI in an academic setting make a difference to them? How can we really exemplify ourselves to create value for industry? Right now, our current chairman is actually Dr. Jonathan Craig, who I'm sure you know quite well. He's a senior executive at ENI out of Milan. And Jonathan's had a great role in the European theater and beyond for AAPG and has served well to the association.
No, that's definitely true. So that's interesting. So I expect that over the last 40 plus years, the industry trends have shifted. So can you tell us a little bit about sort of the past and current focus areas, whether it was sort of regional basin studies, whether it's technology development, and the kinds of things that EGI researchers are focused on today?
Absolutely. Yes. If you go back to the roots, back to 72, and for quite a long period after that, the focus was primarily on regional studies. Across the globe, we've worked in over 100 countries, and we've had so-called boots on the ground through associations with both other government institutes. Matter of fact, EGI was the first institute in the Western Hemisphere to be involved in the former Soviet Union. And our roots go deep back into that history. And since then, we've been all across South America, quite aggressive and successful in places like India and China, and in Europe, where we've had associations with other universities. And we actually have 2 offices in Europe. We've had an office in Canada, an office part-time out of Egypt, and also out of India in the past. So we've spread our wings quite wide. Now, over the years, as industry has moved more into a production mode, our projects and research have become much more oriented to understand not just regional geology, but literally on the ground in the reservoir settings, what's going on. And what we're doing today is spans both deep water systems. We have a very interesting initiative that's approaching a decade in length called EGI Oceans, which is aggressively going back to some of the original scientific data collected by 25 nations, usually under the IODP or DSDP, IODP, and ODP programs, aggregating all that data, but very importantly, using that as the basis to look, if you will, at recalibrating the major ocean basins of the globe, starting with the Atlantic to understand the stratigraphy in a higher resolution, and very importantly, the source rocks and the petroleum systems. So that's one end member spectrum. Now, 10 years ago, our members challenged EGI to go into the unconventional shale petroleum systems. And we've done that worldwide. We've had programs across South America, of course, North America, Europe, North Africa, and all across the former Soviet Union area. So that's been a very strong long-term program. Now, as you'll hear from my colleague shortly, Milind, you see us transition even more further into understanding reservoirs and fluid flow, whether it's for oil and gas, geothermal, or for carbon sequestration.
No, that's really great, Ray. And as you say, that really does tie into what Milind is doing in the chemical engineering department. Milind, you're a petroleum engineer by training. Tell us a little bit about sort of where you see this evolution in projects and sort of set that within the broader energy future that you and that EGI and the University of Utah are preparing for.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. By the way, I'm a chemical engineer by training, but
chemical. Okay. Sorry.
Ray really gave a fantastic introduction to EGI, what it is doing, and what it has done over the last close to 50 years now. That's really a great story, I think. As you pointed out earlier, there is already a big transition going on in the energy industry. There is, of course, a big awareness of climate change and what we should all be doing about it. As a context, we know that the coal consumption, right, has decreased significantly over the last 10 years. With the abundance and I guess less expensive natural gas that's available. And as a result of that, basically the carbon dioxide emissions have gone down. And it is somewhat recognized that even the oil companies now, some of the bigger companies, are going towards embracing the low carbon future. Companies like ENI that Ray mentioned, Total, Equinor, but also some of the US majors have joined what is called the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative to really address some of the sustainability issues that people have been worried about or discussed during the transition. But we also understand that as we go forward, still about 60 to 70% of the energy is going to come from oil and gas, right? So somehow we need to address that need as we move towards the transition. So one of the things that we absolutely want to make sure for our members is that we are here to solve their problems, even the traditional problems as they perceive them in the oil and gas, on the oil and gas side. So from the university's perspective, I would like to address a few points that we are going to focus on. I'm not a geologist, but I understand that what geologists do is one of the most important things. We believe that rocks are number one, that rocks, understanding of the rocks fundamentally and in its connection to fluid flow is most important in solving any type of a subsurface problem. And EGI has had fantastic facilities to do rock characterization and again, both in the lab as well as in the field. And I think that we will continue to do. We'll continue to address that need for the industry. As Ray pointed out, there is more and more need for integration. So we need to solve geology and engineering problems at the same time. That's the way the problems are going to be coming up, and that will be, and we are positioned, I think, really well because of the vast geologic experience and data that EGI has and its partnership with engineering faculty as well as people from the outside. We are on different projects, David. We are also looking at really some fundamental issues. Ray mentioned shales. So we have projects sponsored by Department of Energy, look at the nanoscale, what's happening in these shales from a thermodynamic point of view. Does the bubble point change? How does single phase flow work? How does multi-phase flow work in these systems? And we are really challenging some of the most basic laws that have been established for the last 100 years or so. So we are looking at, do they really apply to these type of systems? Because shales, I mean, have been extremely successful, but there are still a lot of unanswered questions in terms of fluid flow and all that. So I think EGI is well positioned to address these issues and will continue to do so. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. And specifically the two things that you mentioned that really keyed in. One is the interdisciplinarity. I mean, the fact is that geoscience and engineering are really coming closer and closer together. And I applaud that. That's certainly something you see in the industry itself, and that we're seeing here, you know, in AAPG. The other thing, I guess, that really I'm interested in, you know, sitting where I do, I'm looking at sort of the next generation workforce and saying, how do we attract good geoscientists and engineers to continue pursuing careers that are going to be pivotal over the next coming decades in underpinning our energy needs globally. So as a professor, you know, how do you address that with your students? How do you talk to your students about that?
So there are two aspects to this, I think. So we are trying to impress on students that these two are not decoupled issues, sustainability and energy usage. That you need to, the production of energy really goes hand in hand with how we manage our entire balance of society. And so in doing that, I think we want to try to integrate a couple of things that are of interest to students. One is what we call energy and sustainability together. And secondly, the thing that is really catching on now is data science. So even a geologist, for example, coming out of school needs to have some basic understanding of how the data is created, how it is used. And so we have been talking across campus on two aspects. One is this integrated energy type of education that includes sustainability and environmental aspects. And secondly, data analytics, machine learning, that is some basic understanding of that. That way, the students are not only more useful, or they fit in much better into the industry, and also have a better sense of this interdisciplinary aspects of what science and engineering is all about. So I think these two aspects will help us attract, I think, students, or at least retain some of the students in the energy areas.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
As we move forward, yeah. And as you know, we have SKI here also, right? We have Scientific Computing Institute, which is the largest, or one of the large computer institutes, very similar to EGI, but and they have a large data center as well. So we are trying, and EGI recently joined OSDU. So we are trying to see what we can do in terms of adding some applications on the OSDU marketplace so that people are able to use the type of information that EGI generates in a more conventional or in a data format that all companies want to be using.
That's fantastic. You know, Milind, one of the other things that Ray mentioned earlier on, and it's of growing interest to AAPG members, is geothermal energy. And it's the Institute has had a long history in the geothermal sector. Tell us a little bit more about that, what's happening and how you see that fitting into this broader picture.
Yeah, thank you for that question, David. Yeah, geothermal basically is, there is a big geothermal project in Utah now called FORGE, which is the Frontier Observatory for Research in Geothermal Energy. It's been going on for 5 years, and I think it is at least funded for next 5 years and perhaps. So that essentially looks at enhanced geothermal systems, and it's in Milford, Utah, where you're drilling basically 2 connected horizontal wells so that you can inject water from the surface and produce essentially hot water or steam from that by essentially engineering a geothermal systems rather than using the natural fracture system. So if this technology works, and it's a extremely exciting project, it will make geothermal energy available in large swaths of the earth, I think. So it's really an exciting project that way. So EGI really is becoming kind of the world geothermal hub, if you may. And what we want to do is create essentially a center of excellence around geothermal that uses our knowledge of fluid flow, of course, the applied geothermal that is already being funded, and then perhaps even some low temperature geothermal applications to give essentially a large center of excellence, to create a large center of excellence in at the university in geothermal.
Well, Milind, Ray, thank you very much for your time today. We really appreciate you being part of AAPG's ACE 2020 online, and look forward to seeing you online at the conference.
Okay, thank you very much, David.
You will, Dave. Thanks very much. Thank you.